So the agenda of our talk is the type of different third parties, threats, security threats and security risks, how all of them could be mitigated, and short product security checklist that potentially could help you to mitigate a risk in your product. I'm Dmitry, and I started my career in IT as a software developer, Java developer. And in 2009, I joined the great field in IT, application security. There I could apply my knowledge, skill in security in order to perform the security review, penetration testing, and moreover, provide development teams with security trainings regarding how to develop the code secure. In 2014, I joined Wrike, and now we have the great team at Wrike, and we implement and make fantastic security process with great security practices. And in culmination, by now we already have 4 international certifications that show our security maturity. Okay, let's talk regarding third parties. Everybody knows that the heart of Bison runs at the speed of the slowest Bison. The same in the information security. The weaknesses, the weakest part defines the security of the whole project. And it directly affects the product security. I'm not sure that everybody knows what product security is, and sometimes it's mixed this application security, this software development lifecycle, secure code review, etc., etc. But for me personally, and the product security is the combination of various security domains and area that includes but not limited to application, system, infrastructure, incident response, compliance and development and product activities in the application. So the weakest part of any area of them could put the application of the company at the serious security risk, and it could lead to data breach and as a result to financial losses. Today we will talk about vendors as a major and important part for everyone. Let's go. Here are 4 parties: library, outsource, on-prem solution, and SaaS vendors. Library is the most common third party, and I believe it present or any library present in your application, in your product. So it consisted as a code of your application, but developed and delivered but not by third party. Outsource is also a part of your code developed by third party, but in this case, outsourcer could be contractually obligated to provide quality in the application or in library or piece of libraries appropriate in according to your security or other requirements. On-prem directly integrates with your infrastructure in general, so it works absolutely independently. SaaS is a separate case. It's a separate project, and all communication between any SaaS application and your product communicates via API. So each application which is being developed more than 3 years already has something like zoo of all of their type vendors. And nobody in your company, in your architecture or development teams knows how all of their third-party work. Let's start with libraries as the common and key third-party vendors. And according to this picture, a library is a key component, and 79% of your application, of your product, is library code. So it means that 79% of your application is developed, managed, and controlled by third party. And where you can't influence somehow. There is overview of threat modeling, and as you can see, the main risk here is uncontrolled external changes, which could be done by anyone who has access to this repository. And this case can lead the following security risks. Security vulnerabilities. Everybody knows that security vulnerabilities present everywhere. And but well-known and used libraries could seriously impact various applications, and attacker could get the exploit and apply it to any application where a library is used. And regardless, backend, frontend, Java, .NET, JavaScript, everywhere known security vulnerabilities are present. Backdoors. I believe that some of you know samples of such things where third-party libraries started to send data of your application, of your customers, to third-party site. And last but not least, it's a patching. It depends, you always depend on when and how the patch will be delivered. Even the attack is going on, you have to wait, and you can't do anything. And in all of this case, the time works against you. By the way, let's consider how all of this risk could be mitigated, and what approach we use in our product. The ideal looks like this picture, and where we and you should perform the security review of any changes of from external repository and all version of libraries used in your application. For non-critical but trusted libraries, we have local repository. But some of them, some of critical libraries, we continuously use something like graphic magic, image magic, and there are critical showstoppers issues are present there. And something like SSRF, there is possibility to execute remotely code, etc., etc. For such libraries, we create separate sandbox. There, all of them are executed. So the list is here. So it's a security review that could be done by your in-house team. For some libraries related to Java, we use Avast Dependency Checker, which is integrated into CI, Untitled.js for JavaScript. Dependency Checker, developed by Avast.org, we also used for licenses. We have to verify and check licenses which are used in our application due to legal obligations. Sandboxing, mirroring to a local repository, and of course we continuously check different security feeds vulners.com, Reddit, Twitter, etc., etc. Some of them are already integrated into our CI, and we continuously check what kind of new vulnerabilities present in the libraries used by our product. The latest things is a great opportunity for everyone, but it requires additional resources from development team. It's a configurable usage, so it really helps you this incident response. If any serious security attack, serious security vulnerabilities are in place, you will be able to change your configuration to switch your application to use internal functionality. Yeah, it will provide a limited version of feature, but it will work. For example, if you use any transformation of picture and generally use ImageMagick. At the same time, if ImageMagick has 0 day, something else, it's critical for you, for your customers, you will be used to transform to generate images via your versions of the code. And other big vendors. So libraries, it's a short, it's a little things of all iceberg, but it plays important role for all of us. Big vendors. Since software started eating the world, we will see that the numbers of vendors grows by 5th, and just during 8 years. And by now, for us, we consider 3 things: SaaS, on-premises, and outsource. Let's talk some words regarding each of them. Our position here is that for all of those 3 vendors, we have to perform the vendor evaluation process, internal vendor evaluation process, where some points must be done. It includes legal review and approval, where our legal team review privacy policy, term of use, contract details, etc., etc. IT and system operation approval, where our IT ops, sysops are able to provide specific requirements in order to integrate the vendor in light manner. It could be SAML integration, it could be work with this Okta, OneLogin, Google, and etc., etc. It could be considered provisioning, deprovisioning of users. And the major role security plays. So we request vendors to provide us this data classification and data flow diagram. We request owner of this integration provides these details as well, because only owner knows what type of data will be stored or processed in the vendor side. We also need technical architecture diagram. We request independent security examination audit certifications like SOC 2 Type 2, ISO, and of course penetration testing result covering application and network. The important things here is the contract. Only in the contract you are able to provide security requirements to the vendor. And from the legal side, vendor will be contractually obligated to meet your requirement. In Wrike, it looks like this template. Here we request NDA, data protection, vendor security artifacts, and etc., etc. And each vendors, of course, has some risk. It can be security risk or something else. And we have interesting and funny stories with our vendors. And 1 year ago, one of our owners decided to integrate this vendor. After 15 minutes after the form submission, we were on the server of these vendors. And everybody at Wrike really hates this process, because we request owners to think about data, to communicate with vendors, and etc., etc. So many users are involved here. I would like to mention once again that these processes are mandatory for all vendors which we used, and that are considered as SaaS, on-premise, or outsource. Outsource and on-premise are really similar, but it depends on the stage where you are able to provide them with the security requirements. In terms of outsource, you are able continuously provide outsourcing vendor with your requirements. In case of on-premises, you take into account your requirements that should be met by the vendor. The threat modeling looks the same as for the library, but in this case, outsource or on-premise is something more than just library in your application. And additionally to vulnerability, backdoors, and patching, we have additional risk like data transmission issue, data protection violation. So the vendor has to meet requirements between for communication between our application and outsourced application, and it also should store data in secure and appropriate manner that we have. Our system operations guys should take into account the disaster recovery and backups. So in this case, we will be responsible for all of these things, and we will play important role in the recovery. How the risk can be mitigated? The same one: security review, local repositories. Also, we are able to create sandboxing, isolate environment for our vendors. Security feeds play important roles here as well. Configurable usage. So, for example, you're able to use specific functionality from the vendor and light version of it internally. SaaS integration. As I mentioned, it's a absolutely different type, and the threat modeling looks like two players. And all of them communicate using API provided by SaaS vendor. Vulnerability here, risks, vulnerabilities, security vulnerabilities from vendor. But we need to have appropriate section in contract. Spoofing and data transmission issue, the same things, and we need specific things into account to mitigate it. Data protection violation, repudiation, and reputations. So reputation is great things that, and you are able to use this in order to manipulate. Mitigation. So we need to provide vendors these requirements. So it can be SSL pinning, specific attention should be paid to authentication and encryption key management, security feeds, configurable use at the same time, and last but not least, it's logging on both sides. To be honest, you should have appropriate log for any incident, and moreover, I as security manager should be able to understand what things happen on the vendor side. So for me, it would be great if vendor is able to provide us this integration with our CM. Summary and short checklist, as I promised. Big vendor. What I say in the beginning, it is more than just application security things. So the key things in application security is vulnerability, backdoor, and all of them can be reviewed, can be mitigated by your application security team. But some of them should be provided to your product team, your product manager, your team leads, scrum masters, etc., etc. So it's we have to request appropriate identification mechanism, authorization and access control, logging mechanism. It would be great to have integration with our CM and data protection feature. So if your application provides customers this encryption and rest, all of your SaaS vendors have to provide this feature as well. Data transmissions. So you shouldn't have vendor that which provide security level lower than your application. Incident response, authentication, and encryption case. So the checklist, short checklist, that should be always taken into account for any vendors which are planning to be integrated into your application. After authentication and authorization, login, vulnerability management, your vendor should be contractually obligated to provide the fix this appropriate time. It shouldn't affect your application and your customers. Incident response and management processes, in training and awarenesses program, and protection mechanism for storage and transmitted. So that's all. Thank you very much.